Hello everybody, my name is Snoopy Dog 900 and today I am playing Dear and Esther Landmark Edition. I have seen this game on Steam and it caught my attention because the way it was, you'll see, like, it's, I'm kind of don't know how to explain it.
Dear Esther, the gulls do not land here anymore. I've noticed that this year they seem to shun the place. Maybe it's the depletion of the fishing stock driving them away. Perhaps it's me. When he first landed here, Donnelly wrote that the herds were sickly and their shepherds the lowest of the miserable classes that populate these Hebridean islands.
Oh, I can walk.
300 years later, even they have departed.
So what I saw on Steam, it's basically a walking simulator. I thought, why not? Plus the game looked really beautiful. I mean, alright, now we're back. Let's go on this one. This long I can't run, just walk, so. It's so pretty though. Man, I would love to go to a place like this. It's so pretty.
Donnelly reported the legend of the hermit, a holy man who sought solitude in its most pure form. Allegedly, he rode here from the mainland in a boat without a bottom, so all the creatures of the sea could rise at night to converse with him. How disappointed he must have been with their chatter. Perhaps now, when all that haunts the ocean is the rubbish dumped from the tankers, he'd find more peace. They say he threw his arms wide in a valley on the south side and the cliff opened up to provide him shelter. They say he died of fever 116 years later.
Wow.
The shepherds left gifts for him at the mouth of the cave, but Donnelly records they never claimed to have seen him. I have visited the cave and I have left my gifts, but like them, I appear to be an unworthy subject of his solitude.
Whoa. Okay, so can I go up? Wait, where am I supposed to go? Can't jump. Maybe I am supposed to go down, or? Aha! There's another path.
Those islands in the distance, I'm sure, are nothing more than relics of another time, sleeping giants, somnambulist gods laid down for a final dreaming. I wash the sand from my lips and grip my wrist ever more tightly. My shaking arms will not support my fading diaries.
Is that what I think that is? Oh wait, oh crap! I know what that is. I think I've seen that before. Is that the what dolly use or something? It was at the dolly museum. I think that's what it looks like. Yeah, that's what it looks like. I just don't know the name. Oh, what was it? I think that's it.
I have found the ship's manifest, crumpled and waterlogged under a stash of paint cans. It tells me that along with this present cargo, there was a large quantity of antacid yogurt bound for the European market. It must have washed out to sea. God knows there are no longer gulls or goats here to eat it.
So I don't know what to do in this game. Basically, it's just a walk simulator, but I guess he's just doing for quotes. Do we just go back? I guess. Yeah. Oh, going back then. I wonder if he's gonna say the same thing again like earlier that he said, well, okay, so I guess walking back then. Man, I love that sound. The sounds of the waves at the coast. Man, I love going to the beach. It's not really a sunny day, it's more like a, how do you say, dawn? Pretty much like a dawn. Not close to a sunset yet, but midday.
The mount is clearly the focal point of this landscape. It almost appears so well placed as to be artificial. I find myself easily slipping into the delusional state of ascribing purpose, deliberate motive to everything here. Was this island formed during the moment of impact? When we were torn loose from our moorings and the seatbelts cut motorway lanes into our chests and shoulders, did it first break surface then? When someone had died or was dying, or was so ill they gave up what little hope they could sacrifice, they cut parallel lines into the cliff, exposing the white chalk beneath. You could see them from the mainland or the fishing boats, and know to send aid or impose a cordon of protection, and wait a generation until whatever pestilence stalked the cliff paths died along with its hosts. My lines are just for this: to keep any would-be rescuers at bay. The infection is not simply of the flesh.
I was gonna say was, like that?
I quote directly: a motley lot with little to recommend them. I have now spent 3 days in their company. That is, I fear, enough for any man not born amongst them. Despite their tedious inclination to quote scripture, they seem to me the most God-forsaken of all the inhabitants of the Outer Isles. Indeed, in this case, the very gravity of that term, forsaken by God, seems to find its very apex. It appears to me that Donnelly, too, found those who wander this shoreline to be adrift from any chance of redemption. Did he include himself in that, I wonder?
Okay, so we're supposed to go this way. Like I was saying, I love the music. The music is so soothing to this. It's just perfect. But it comes and goes.
Dear Esther, I met Paul. I made my own little pilgrimage. My Damascus, a small semi-detached on the outskirts of Wolverhampton. We drank coffee in his kitchen and tried to connect to one another. Although he knew I hadn't come in search of an apology, reason or retribution, he still spiraled in panic, thrown high and lucid by his own dented bonnet. Responsibility had made him old. Like us, he'd already passed beyond any conceivable boundary of life.
This hermit, this seer, this distant historian of bones and old bread, where did he vanish to? Why, asked the farmers. Why, asked Jacobson. Why bother with your visions at all, if you're just to throw your arms up at the cliff and let it close in behind you and seal you into the belly of the island, a museum shut to all but the most devoted?
What's up with all these markings? Let's go this way.
The vegetation here has fossilized from the roots up. To think they once grazed animals here, the remnants of occupation being evidence to that. It is all sick to death. The water is too polluted for the fish, the sky is too thin for the birds, and the soil is cut with the bones of hermits and shepherds. I've heard it said that human ashes make great fertilizer, that we could sow a forest from all that is left of your hips and ribcage, with enough left over to thicken the air and repopulate the bay.
Chemistry. This has got to be clues to something. A chemistry book that I don't know the name. It's gonna all add up. But if you haven't seen like Dolly, I think I'm saying the name right, Dolly Art, the art museum, go there. I mean, I went there once. Oh man, I'm a big fan of his artwork. I think my favorite one is, I think I'm saying their name right, the Clock of Despair, or something like that. Oh, that one with the melting clocks. That one's always one of my favorite. I don't know why. It's just, it seems odd.
Dear Esther, I have now driven the stretch of the M5 between Exeter and Bristol over 21 times. But although I have all the reports and all the witnesses, and have cross-referenced them within a millimetre using my Ordnance Survey maps, I simply cannot find the location. You'd think there would be marks to serve as some evidence. It's somewhere between the turn-off for Sanford and the welcome brake services. But although I can always see it in my rear-view mirror, I have as yet been unable to pull ashore. It's only at night that this place makes any sluggish effort at life. You can see the buoy and the aerial. I've been taking to sleeping through the day in an attempt to resurrect myself. I can feel the last days drawing upon me. There's little point now in continuation. There must be something new to find here. Some nook or some cranny that offers a perspective worth clinging to. I've burnt my bridges. I've sunk my boats and watched them go to water.
Did neither he dare not drink? I think that's what it says. Nor drink? What's it say? Dare not to drink or not to dare? I don't know.
There must be a hole in the bottom of the boat. How else could new hermits have arrived?
Okay. So pretty much I see there's no way island except for me. So is everybody dead, or? I mean...
I had kidney stones and you visited me in the hospital. After the operation, when I was still half submerged in anesthetic, your outline and your speech both blurred. Now my stones have grown into an island and made their escape, and you have been rendered opaque by the car of a drunk.
Is that what that meant? By the drunk? No, should not the drunk. Something like that. Oh no, then he got killed by
Is this what
drunk.
Paul saw through his windscreen? Not Lot's wife looking over her shoulder, but a scar in the hillside, falling away to black forever.
Ooh, can we go in? Oh, maybe not. Or maybe that's the last spot we go to. I'm gonna go up this path. Oh, there's a house up there.
I've begun to climb, away from the sea and towards the center. It is a straight line to the summit, where the evening begins to coil around the aerial and squeeze the signals into early silence. The bothy squats against the mount to avoid the gaze of the aerial. I too will creep under the island like an animal and approach it from the northern shore.
Such good words.
The bothy was constructed originally in the early 1700s. By then, shepherding had formalized into a career. The first habitual shepherd was a man called Jacobsen, from a lineage of migratory Scandinavians. He was not considered a man of breeding by the mainlanders. He came here every summer whilst building the bothy, hoping eventually that becoming a man of property would secure him a wife and a lineage. Donnelly records that it did not work. He caught some disease from his malcontented goats and died 2 years after completing it. There was no one to carve white lines into the cliff for him either.
That's...
Inventory. A trestle table we spread wallpaper on in our first home. A folding chair I laughed at you for bringing camping in the lakes. I was uncomfortable later and you laughed then. This diary, the bed with the broken springs. Once asleep you have to remember not to dream. A change of clothes, Donnelly's book stolen from Edinburgh Library on the way here. I will burn them all on the last morning and make an aerial of my own.
See, this game has...
What to make of Donnelly, the laudanum and the syphilis? It is clearly not how he began, but I've been unable to discover if the former was a result of his visiting the island or the force that drove him here. For the syphilis, a drunk driver smashing his insides into a pulp as he stumbled these paths, I can only offer my empathy. We're all victims of our age. My disease is the internal combustion engine and the cheap fermentation of yeast.
But this is, I believe, my first walking simulator game I ever done.
They found Jacobsen in early spring. The thaw had only just come. Even though he'd been dead nearly 7 months, his body had been frozen right down to the nerves and had not even begun to decompose. His fingernails were raw and bitten to the quick. They found the phosphorescent moss that grows in the caves deep under the nails. Whatever he'd been doing under the island when his strength began to fail is lost. He'd struggled halfway up the cliff again, perhaps in a delirium, perhaps trying to reach the Bothy's fire before curling into a stone and expiring.
But, yeah, I really like this. The music and everything. I can see why they made it into landmark edition.
Climbing down to the caves, I slipped and fell and have injured my leg. I think the femur is broken. It is clearly infected. The skin has turned a bright, tight pink, and the pain is crashing in on waves, winter tides against my shoreline, drowning out the ache of my stones. I struggled back to the bothy to rest, but it has become clear that there is only one way this is likely to end. The medical supplies I looted from the trawler have suddenly found their purpose. They will keep me lucid for my final ascent.
Oh, wait. I think I remember this game. I remember I had a friend, I knew someone that played this game and told me about it. I remember now. And I think I remember this part.
Did Jakobsen crawl this far? Can I identify the scratches his nails ruined into the rocks? Am I following him cell for cell, inch for inch? Why did he turn back on himself and not carry through to the ascent?
Man, this game, that's so cool. Imagine if they made this for VR. Oh man, that would be really cool. It would look so real. Oh man, I think that was so cool to go in those caves. Oh yeah, definitely. I remember him showing me this part. Wow.
There is no other direction, no other exit from this motorway. Speeding past this junction, I saw you waiting at the roadside, a one last drink in your trembled hands.
Oh, definitely. That's a big wow. That is so beautiful. Bombs away! Oh man, that is so cool. I'm definitely gonna play more of these Walking Simulators. sounds of it is so smooth, soothing. That's what I was looking for. Oh, cool mushrooms. Are we going fast? Unless we're crawling. Mr. Narrator, you hadn't said anything in a while. Are you amazed as me from all this?
If the caves are my guts, this must be the place where the stones are first formed. The bacteria phosphoresce and rise, singing through the tunnels. Everything here is bound by the rise and fall, like a tide. Perhaps the whole island is actually underwater.
Or
This cannot be the shaft they threw the goats into. It cannot be the landfill where the parts of your life that would not burn ended up. It cannot be the chimney that delivered you to the skies. It cannot be the place where you rained back down again to fertilize the soil and make small flowers in the rocks.
Behold. Behold, dangerous is working. It's hard to read it. Somebody down in the comments below, if you can understand that, please put it down in the comments down below. If you can understand it. I mean, it's so mashed up together. It's hard to I don't know if I'm saying it right. And it's shall be promoted and catch the last two. Oh man. The mushrooms, that's so quality glow. Oh, the reflection. The sounds. Oh no! Was I supposed to go in the hole? Wait, what? I'm in the real world, underwater. Oh no, no, no. Am I dead? So where am I supposed to go? Just run away from the crime? Alright, one more chapter, I believe. Okay. Ooh, a full moon.
The moon over the Sanford Junction, headlights in your retinas. Donnelly drove a grey hatchback without a bottom. All the creatures of the tarmac rose to sing to him. All manner of symbols crudely scrawled across the cliff face of my unrest. My life reduced to an electrical diagram. All my gulls have taken flight. They will no longer roost on these outcrops. The lure of the moon over the Sanford Junction is too strong. Fire and soil, I chose fire. It seemed the more contemporary of the options, the more sanitary. I could not bear the thought of the reassembly of such a ruin. Stitching arm to shoulder and femur to hip, charting a line of thread like traffic stilled on a motorway, making it all acceptable for tearful aunts and traumatized uncles flown in specially for the occasion. Reduce to ash, mix with water, make a phosphorescent paint for these rocks and ceilings.
Tide must be out.
Hall by the roadside, by the exit for Damascus, all ticking and cooled, all feathers and remorse. All of these signals routed like traffic through the circuit diagrams of our guts. Those badly written boats torn bottomless in the swells, washing us forever ashore.
From here, I can see my armada. I collected all the letters I'd ever meant to send to you, if I'd have ever made it to the mainland, but had instead collected at the bottom of my rucksack, and I spread them out along the lost beach. Then I took each and every one, and I folded them into boats. I folded you into the creases, and then, as the sun was setting, I set the fleet to sail. Shattered into 21 pieces, I consigned you to the Atlantic, and I sat here until I'd watched all of you sink.
Wow. That's all I guess. That's all I can think of to say right now is, wow. I mean, on a sudden, a light from the heavens stumbled around him, he will fell to the ground. It's a bird nest. I don't know what to say about this game. I mean, it's beautiful, awesome, and it's just speechless. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Come back.
Oh, did I do it wrong? Oh, I wasn't supposed to do that. Okay, I was supposed to go upstairs. Well, I got an achievement from that. I just noticed that right there. It's so pretty. What's all those lines there? I keep thinking there's a shift and this is a walking simulator, and I guess for one thing, it takes patience for this. If you don't really get the patience for this game, I don't think it's really your taste.
When Paul keeled over dead on the road to Damascus, they resuscitated him by hitting him in the chest with stones gathered by the roadside. He was lifeless for 21 minutes, certainly long enough for the oxygen levels in his brain to have decreased and caused hallucinations and delusions of transcendence. I'm running out of painkillers, and the moon has become almost unbearably bright.
I don't think this game's your cup of tea, but I mean, it's beautiful, and just listening to the music and him speak of the words. Basically, what I'm getting from this, after a car crash, pretty much, because you see the wreckage, the emulator, but he was a drunk driver. Well, I'm sure
I've begun my voyage in a paper boat without a bottom. I will fly to the moon in it. I've been folded along a crease in time, a weakness in the sheet of life. Now you've settled on the opposite side of the paper to me. I can see your traces in the ink that soaks through the fiber, the pulped vegetation. When we become waterlogged and the cage disintegrates, we will intermingle. When this paper aeroplane leaves the cliff edge and carves parallel vapor trails in the dark, we will come together. If only Donnelly had experienced this, he would have realized he was his own shoreline, as am I. Just as I am becoming this island, so he became his syphilis, retreating into the burning synapses, the stones, the infection. The stones in my stomach will weigh me down and ensure my descent is true and straight. I will break through the fog of these godforsaken pills and achieve clarity. All my functions are clogged, all my veins are choked. If my leg doesn't rot off before I reach the summit, it will be a miracle. There are 21 connections in the circuit diagram of the anti-lock brakes. There are 21 species of gull inhabiting these islands. It is 21 miles between the Sandford Junction and the turn-off for home. All these things cannot, will not be a coincidence.
So where are we going? So the island's supposed to mean a symbol or something? Is that what you say?
He was not drunk, Esther. He was not drunk at all. He had not drunk with Donnelly or spat Jacobson back at the sea. He had not careered across the lost shores and terminal beaches of this nascent archipelago. He did not intend his bonnet to be crumpled like a spent tissue by the impact. His windscreen was not star-studded all over like a map of the heavens. His paintwork etched with circuit diagrams, strange fish to call the gulls away. The phosphorescence of the skid marks lighting the M5 all the way from Exeter to Damascus. Run out of places to climb. I will abandon this body and take to the air.
Oh no,
Dear Esther, I have burnt my belongings, my books, this death certificate. Mine will be written all across this island. Who was Jacobson? Who remembers him? Donnelly has written of him, but who was Donnelly? Who remembers him? I have painted, carved, hewn, scored into this space all that I could draw from him. There will be another to these shores to remember me. I will rise from the ocean like an island without bottom, come together like a stone, become an aerial, a beacon, that they will not forget you. We have always been drawn here. One day the gulls will return and nest in our bones and our history. I will look to my left and see Esther Donnelly flying beside me. I will look to my right and see Paul Jacobsen flying beside me. They will leave white lines carved into the air to reach the mainland, where help will be sent.
Oh, it became a bird. Oh my gosh, I thought he was going to... No thanks. I'm good. Okay, so that was Dear Istna Landmark Edition. Oh, where to start? I'm gonna start. This game was beautiful, awesome, but the ending, oh my gosh. I mean, this game, I love these type of games. They have a sense of beauty to them. I mean, like, some people say video games don't have a beauty in art, but what do you call that? I mean, that was pretty. But if you like the video, hit that like button, subscribe, leave a comment down below. I'm probably going to do more of these games and some others, but man, it's going to be a while. But man, this game was good. I mean, I'm a little too much right now, but I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.